Hello everyone. Before we begin, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment saying where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories like this. Now let's begin. I've always liked quiet places, maybe more than most people. After years of living in a crowded city apartment with traffic outside my window every night, I decided I needed something different. That's how I ended up renting a small house far outside town, surrounded by open fields and long stretches of empty road. The nearest gas station was 15 minutes away. My closest neighbor was someone I'd never even seen. The house itself wasn't special, but it felt peaceful. It had faded white siding, a wooden porch that creaked when I stepped on it, and tall grass that moved slowly in the wind. Inside, everything smelled faintly of old wood and dust, like it had been closed up for years before I arrived. I didn't mind. I liked the quiet. No sirens. No loud music from upstairs neighbors. Just the sound of wind brushing against the windows and crickets singing at night. Most evenings, I'd sit on the porch with a cup of coffee and watch the sun disappear behind the trees. The sky would turn orange and then deep purple, and the world would feel still. It felt safe out there. Simple. Like nothing bad could ever find me in a place so far away from everything. The first strange thing happened about a week after I moved in. It was small. So small that I almost didn't think about it. I came home from buying groceries in town and noticed my front door was slightly open. Not wide, just enough that it wasn't fully shut. I stood there for a moment, holding the bags, telling myself I probably hadn't closed it properly. The lock still worked. Nothing inside looked disturbed. I walked through every room just to be sure, but everything was where I left it. Still, I started double-checking the door after that. Then it was the windows. One morning I woke up and found the kitchen window cracked open. I clearly remembered shutting it the night before because the air had been cold. I even checked the latch. It wasn't broken. I told myself maybe the old frame shifted during the night. The house was old after all. Old houses made noises. Old houses moved. At night, the quiet felt heavier than before. Sometimes, as I lay in bed, I would hear what sounded like slow footsteps on the porch. Not loud, just soft creaks, like someone shifting their weight on the wooden boards outside. The first time it happened, I held my breath and listened carefully. The sound stopped after a few seconds. I waited, heart beating faster than it should have been. The next morning, I stepped outside and looked around. Nothing. No footprints in the dirt. No car tracks on the road. I tried to laugh it off. Maybe it was an animal. A raccoon. A stray dog. The fields around the house were big enough to hide anything. But the feeling started to grow. Sometimes I'd walk into the living room and feel like I had interrupted something. Like the air itself had shifted. A chair would look slightly angled, even though I was sure it had been straight before. Once, the hallway light was on when I was certain I had turned it off. Each time, I told myself the same thing. You're just adjusting. It's a new place. You're alone. Your mind is playing tricks on you. But the isolation didn't feel peaceful anymore. It felt like the house was listening. And the worst part was, I had no one to ask. No neighbors to check with. No one close enough to say, "Hey, did you see anyone around here?" Out there, in the middle of nowhere, it was just me. And whatever I couldn't explain. It stopped feeling like coincidences the night the power went out. There was no storm. No wind. The sky had been clear when the sun set. I was sitting on the couch reading when everything went black. The refrigerator hum died. The lights blinked once and disappeared. The silence that followed was complete. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. My hands were already shaking. I told myself it was just a power outage. Maybe a line down somewhere. It happens. Then I heard it. A loud bang against the side of the house. Not like an animal. Not like wind. It sounded intentional. Solid, like someone had hit the wall with their fist. I froze. Another bang. Closer this time. Near the back of the house. My chest tightened. I rushed to the front door and checked the lock. It was secure. I checked it again anyway. Then the windows. Every single one. My movements were quick, almost clumsy. I kept thinking I'd see a face staring back at me through the glass. There was nothing. But then the porch creaked. Slow. Heavy. One step. Then another. Not random. Not light like before. Deliberate. I moved toward the window beside the door and slowly lifted the edge of the curtain. My breathing felt too loud. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might give me away. At first, I saw only darkness. Then I saw it. A shape at the edge of the yard, near the tall grass, too tall to be an animal, standing completely still, watching the house, watching me. I dropped the curtain and stumbled back. My mind raced. Maybe it was a tree, a shadow. Maybe I imagined it, but deep down I knew. Someone was out there, and they weren't lost. They were waiting. I don't know why I opened the door. Maybe it was panic. Maybe it was anger. Maybe I was tired of feeling hunted inside my own house. The porch light was dead with the power out, so the only light came from my phone. My hand trembled as I stepped outside. The night air felt colder than it should have. Heavy. Still. "Hey!" I shouted, my voice breaking. Tall grass at the edge of the yard barely moved. For a second, I almost convinced myself it had all been in my head. Then my phone light caught something. Footprints. Fresh. Pressed deep into the dirt around the side of the house. Not just one set. Several. Overlapping. Circling. My stomach dropped. They weren't just passing by. They had been walking around the house. Over and over. I backed up slowly, my light shaking across the walls, and that's when I saw it. On the siding, just beneath my bedroom window, there were marks. Long scratches dragged across the wood. Dozens of them. Some are shallow, some deep. Like someone had been standing there scraping. Testing. A sudden crack echoed from behind me. I turned. The figure wasn't at the edge of the yard anymore. It was halfway across it, moving toward me. Not running. Walking. Slow. Calm. Certain. My body finally reacted before my mind could. I stumbled backward, nearly dropping my phone, and slammed the door shut. I locked it, then locked it again, as if that would matter. Because as I pressed my back against the door, trying to breathe, I heard it. 3 slow knocks. From the other side. Not loud. Just enough to let me know. It wasn't afraid of me anymore. I didn't sleep that night. After the knocking stopped, I stayed on the floor with my back against the door until the sun started to rise. I don't remember deciding to call the police. I just remember my hands moving on their own, my voice sounding far away when I explained what happened. They arrived an hour later. 2 officers walked around the house. They found the footprints. They saw the scratches. One of them even admitted it looked like someone had been circling the property. But they didn't find anyone. No cars on the road. No one is hiding in the fields. No broken windows. No forced entry. "Probably someone is messing with you," one of them said. "You're pretty isolated out here." That word stayed with me. Isolated. I packed my things that same afternoon. I didn't care about the lease. I didn't care about the money. I just wanted walls around me that other people lived behind. Noise. Streetlights. Anything but that silence. But here's the part that still keeps me awake. 3 days after I left, I realized something. The scratches under my bedroom window weren't random. They weren't wild or scattered. They were grouped. Organized. Like tally marks. And I know this sounds crazy, but I can't stop thinking about how many there were. 27. Exactly the number of nights I had slept in that house. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I still hear those 3 slow knocks. And I can't help wondering, what would have happened on night 28? I took the job because it paid more than anything else I could find. It was a fire lookout position in a remote forest, miles away from the nearest town. For 3 months, my job was simple. Sit in a tall wooden tower, scan the trees for smoke, and report anything unusual. That was it. No traffic. No coworkers. Just trees and sky. The tower stood on top of a rocky hill, surrounded by endless forest in every direction. During the day, the view was beautiful. Green stretched, so far it almost looked fake. The air smelled clean, like pine and dry earth warming under the sun. Sometimes I'd hear birds calling from below, or the wind moving gently through the treetops. The cabin attached to the tower was small but comfortable. A narrow bed, a desk, a radio, and a tiny propane stove. At night, I'd cook something simple and watch the sunset turn the forest gold. It felt peaceful, quiet in a way that made my mind slow down. I liked the isolation. It made life feel simple again. Out there, nothing felt urgent. Nothing felt dangerous. It was just me, the trees, and the open sky. And for the first few weeks, that was enough. The first strange thing happened during my 3rd week. Around midnight, the radio turned on by itself. It wasn't loud, just a sudden burst of static that cut through the silence of the cabin. I sat up in bed, my heart racing, staring at the small device on the desk. I was sure I had turned it off before sleeping. I always did. I waited for a voice to come through. Nothing. Just static. After a few seconds, it stopped. I told myself it was probably interference. The forest was old. The equipment was old. Signals bounced around out there. The next morning, I checked the radio. The switch was still in the off position. That bothered me more than I wanted to admit. A few days later, I noticed something else. There was a narrow dirt path that circled the base of the tower. It wasn't official, just a trail worn down by animals or maybe previous lookouts walking around. One evening, while stretching my legs, I saw fresh footprints in the dirt. Not boots like mine. Bare feet. I stood there staring at them. They were clear. Humans. Toes pressed into the soil. The stride was uneven, like whoever made them had been walking slowly. I told myself it could have been a hiker. Maybe someone is wandering too far off trail. But no one was supposed to be out there. The nearest marked trail was miles away. The next day, the prints were gone. The wind must have erased them. Still, I started locking the trapdoor at night. After that, the forest didn't sound the same. During the day, everything felt normal. But once darkness settled, the silence changed. It felt deeper, like something was holding its breath. Twice, I heard movement below the tower. Not animals crashing through bushes. This was softer, controlled, like careful steps over dry leaves. One night, I grabbed my flashlight and leaned over the railing, shining it down into the trees. The beam caught nothing but trunks and shadows. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had stepped back just before the light found it. I started sleeping lighter. Every small noise pulled me awake. Every creak of the wooden structure made my chest tighten. I kept telling myself I was alone. But the forest didn't feel empty anymore. It felt occupied. Everything changed the night I saw the smoke. It was just past 2 a.m. I couldn't sleep again, so I stepped out onto the narrow balcony and scanned the horizon like I always did. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. Then I saw it clearly. A thin column of smoke rising from the trees. Not far, maybe half a mile from the base of the hill. My stomach dropped. There were no lightning storms. No campers allowed in this zone. No controlled burns scheduled. I rushed back inside and grabbed the binoculars. My hands were shaking so badly, I had to steady them against the railing. Through the lenses, I saw a small fire burning in a clearing. It wasn't spreading. It wasn't wild. It was controlled. Contained. Be careful. And standing beside it, someone. I couldn't see the details. Just a tall, thin figure standing perfectly still, facing the direction of the tower. Facing me. I pulled the binoculars away, my breathing turning shallow. Maybe they weren't looking at me. Maybe I just imagined that part. Then the figure lifted one arm. Slowly. I stumbled back inside and grabbed the radio, flipping it on. "This is Tower 7, I said, my voice barely steady. "I have an unauthorized fire at the north clearing. Possible trespasser." Static answered me. Then faintly a voice came through. But it wasn't dispatched. It was close. Too close. "Why are you watching me?" the voice whispered. The sound didn't come from the radio speaker. It came from behind me. Inside the cabin. I turned so fast I nearly fell. The cabin was empty. The bed. The desk. The stove. All exactly where they should be. But the trapdoor. It was open. I was sure I had locked it. I checked it every night. Twice. The wooden ladder that led down the center of the tower disappeared into darkness. Cold air drifted up from below, carrying the smell of smoke. Not forest smoke. Campfire smoke. My chest tightened. My mind screamed at me to slam the hatch shut. To block it. To run. Then I heard it. A slow footstep on the ladder. Creak. Another one. Creak. Someone was climbing up. Not rushing. Not hiding it. Just climbing. I backed away until my shoulders hit the wall. My flashlight beam shook violently as I aimed it at the opening. A hand appeared first. Dirty. Bare. Fingers gripping the edge of the floor. Then a face rose into view. Pale in the flashlight glow. Eyes wide but calm. A faint smile stretching across cracked lips. "You shouldn't watch people," the man said softly. I couldn't breathe. He pulled himself halfway into the cabin, moving slowly like he wasn't afraid of me at all. Like he had done this before. Something inside me finally snapped. I lunged forward and kicked the trapdoor with everything I had. His fingers slipped. He fell. The scream that followed didn't echo for long. Just a heavy, distant thud far below. Then silence. Complete silence. I don't remember climbing down the ladder. I just remember my legs shaking so badly I had to grip each rung with both hands. The smell of smoke was stronger near the bottom, mixed with something metallic. He was lying on the ground beside the base of the tower, twisted, too still. The flashlight slipped from my hand when I saw his face. His eyes were open, staring past me. That faint smile is still frozen there. I stumbled back and grabbed the radio again. This time it worked. Dispatch answered. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else as I explained what happened. By sunrise, authorities arrived. They found a small fire in the clearing. They found footprints around the tower. They found markings carved into one of the lower support beams. Lines. Dozens of them. Tally marks. When they searched the surrounding forest, they discovered something worse. Old fire pits. Several of them. All positioned where the tower was clearly visible. Like someone had been sitting down there, watching, for a long time. They never found any identification on the man. No records. No missing persons report that matched him. Officially, they ruled it self-defense. I quit the job that same week. But here's what I can't stop thinking about. When I packed my things, I noticed something carved into the underside of the desk. So small I had never seen it before. Another tally mark. Fresh. Which means he had been inside the cabin before that night. And I still don't know how many times he climbed that ladder while I was sleeping. I never thought I'd take a solo camping trip, but I needed it. The city had become too loud, too crowded, too suffocating. I packed my car with the bare essentials, tent, sleeping bag, food, water, and drove hours out of town until the pavement disappeared beneath my tires. The forest I chose was deep, isolated, and officially designated for dispersed camping. That meant no campgrounds, no other campers, no rangers nearby. Just the trees, the birds, and the constant hum of the wilderness. I liked it that way. I found a small clearing surrounded by tall pines. The ground was soft with pine needles, and a creek ran nearby, its water clear and cold. I set up my tent, stacked some firewood, and lit a small campfire before the sun went down. The smoke curled upward and disappeared into the night sky. At first, it felt peaceful. The crackling fire, the scent of wood burning, the smell of damp earth. It all made me forget the city, the stress, the deadlines. I lay back on my sleeping bag, staring at the stars peeking through the treetops. I felt completely alone. And that was exactly how I wanted it. I had no idea how quickly that sense of security would vanish. The first hint that something wasn't right came a few hours after dark. I was sitting by the fire, eating a small meal, when I heard a snap behind me. Twigs. Small. Probably a deer. I told myself that. I kept my eyes on the shadows, trying to peer through the darkness. Nothing moved. The fire crackled and popped. The forest was otherwise silent. Then it happened again. A heavier snap, closer this time. Like someone stepping over roots. My pulse quickened. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe a raccoon. Maybe a fox. But the sound didn't feel right. It was deliberate, careful. I went to the edge of the clearing with my flashlight. The beam swept over the trees, over the underbrush, over nothing. Just shadows. But the feeling of being watched settled over me like a wet blanket. Later, I noticed my firewood pile had shifted. Not much, just a couple of logs that weren't stacked neatly, but I had been careful when I set it up. I tried to convince myself it was the wind. The night was still. The air was almost too calm. That's when I heard it, a low whisper, barely audible, coming from the trees. "Hello," I called, my voice sounding far too loud to me. No response. I went back to the fire, but the sense of being watched didn't leave. Every rustle in the brush, every snapping branch, made me jump. I found myself checking behind me constantly, unable to relax, unable to tell if I was imagining things or if someone, or something, was moving in the darkness. By midnight, I hadn't slept. Every sound made me tense. Every shadow seemed alive, and I realized with a sinking feeling, I wasn't as alone as I thought. By 1 a.m., I was on edge. The whispers came again. Soft, indistinct, coming from all around the clearing. I couldn't tell if they were words or just the wind rustling through the pines. My flashlight shook in my hand, throwing thin beams across the underbrush. Then I saw it, a movement in the corner of my vision. A dark shape slipping between the trees, stopping whenever I swung the light toward it. I froze. My heart pounded so loud I thought it would give me away. I grabbed a long stick from the ground, my only weapon, and whispered, "Who's there?" Silence. Then a sound that made my blood run cold. Footsteps. Barefoot. Crunching the pine needles. Slow. Deliberate. Coming closer to my tent. I scrambled inside, fumbling with the zipper, my mind racing. What if it was a person? What if it wasn't human? The forest felt different now, alive, watching, waiting. I peeked through the tent flap. Nothing. Just shadows stretching into the dark. I could hear the creek nearby, but beneath it, I swore I heard breathing. Heavy. Close. I tried to convince myself it was my imagination. The isolation. The darkness. My nerves. But every instinct screamed otherwise. Then I heard a whisper, clear this time, right beside my ear. Why are you here? I spun around. No one. Nothing. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the stick. I could barely hold the flashlight. I thought about running, but I didn't know which way was safe. Every direction looked the same. Trees, shadows, darkness. And that's when I realized I wasn't lost in the forest. The forest was lost in me. And whatever was out there was waiting for me to make a mistake. I couldn't stay in the tent any longer. Every second felt like hours. The whispers, the footsteps, the feeling of eyes drilling into my back. It was unbearable. I grabbed my flashlight and my backpack and ran. Not toward the car. Not toward the road. Just away. Through the trees, over roots, across the creek. My heart was hammering, my lungs burning. Every shadow seemed to move with me. Every snap of a branch sounded like someone following, closing in. Then I tripped over a log and fell hard. The flashlight rolled across the ground. Its beam landed on him. A man, or something like a man, was standing there, just beyond the trees. Pale. Thin. Too tall. His eyes reflected the beam like glass. His mouth opened, and a low, rasping laugh echoed through the clearing. I scrambled backward, sliding down a small embankment. My flashlight hit the ground again, spinning wildly. When the beam landed, he had moved closer. No sound of footsteps this time. Just appearing. You shouldn't be here, he whispered. His voice was soft, come wrong. I bolted. I didn't care where. I didn't care if I ran in circles. I just ran. Branches tore at my arms and face. Roots tripped me. But I didn't stop. Not for a second. Then I saw it. The car. My salvation. I leaped inside, locked the doors, and slammed the keys into the ignition. The engine roared to life. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The clearing was empty. No man. No shadows. Just the forest, silent again. But I knew it hadn't gone. It was still there. Deep down, it wasn't done with me. Watching. I drove for hours without stopping, the forest shrinking behind me. But the feeling didn't leave. Every shadow along the road, every flicker of movement in the rearview mirror made my hands tighten on the wheel. When I finally reached the nearest town, I told myself I was safe. People, lights, noise, civilization. It should have been enough. But it wasn't. For days after, I couldn't sleep. Every gust of wind against my window sounded like whispers. Every creak in the floorboards, every distant footstep made me spin around. My dreams were filled with the forest. With him, the tall, thin figure, standing silently among the trees, smiling. Watching. Waiting. I checked online. Missing persons. News articles. Nothing. No record of anyone else ever being in that clearing. No explanation for what I saw, heard, or felt. Even now, months later, I can't go near the forest roads. I can't drive past the signs marking the public lands without my heart racing. Sometimes, when I'm alone at night, I swear I hear that rasping laugh. Just a faint echo. Not outside. Not in the city. It comes from inside my own head. I don't know if it followed me, or if it's just the memory that won't let go. But one thing is certain, I'll never go back. And I'll never forget what it felt like to be truly alone and watched. I took a late-night shift at the small diner on the edge of town because I needed money fast. The pay was decent, the work was simple, and most of all, the town was quiet after midnight. Not many customers, just the hum of the neon sign outside and the occasional car passing by on the empty road. The diner itself was nothing special, faded linoleum floors, cracked booths, a counter that had seen better days. Coffee smelled perpetually burnt, and the fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead. But it was familiar, safe, routine. I liked the simplicity. Most nights, I'd clean, restock, and serve the few patrons who stopped in. Sometimes the quiet was comforting. Other times, it felt heavy, almost too still. But I never thought much about it. The town beyond the diner was smaller than I realized. Just a handful of streetlights, a few houses spaced far apart, and the surrounding forest that swallowed the horizon. Driving home meant long stretches of road without a single car, the headlights cutting through darkness that felt thicker than usual. For the first few weeks, the nights were uneventful. A lullaby of coffee machines, sizzling grills, and distant wind outside. I felt normal, comfortable. I had no idea that my life, in that ordinary diner, was about to collide with something I couldn't explain. It started with small things, almost unnoticeable at first. One night, I was wiping down the counter when I noticed a car parked outside, headlights off, engine running. Strange, because the diner was practically in the middle of nowhere, and hardly anyone drove by after midnight. I watched through the window, expecting someone to get out, but the car stayed still. After a few minutes, it drove off without a sound. I shrugged it off. Maybe someone is lost or just waiting. A few nights later, I heard knocking, soft, slow, on the diner's back door. I went to check. Nothing. Just the empty parking lot and the wind brushing against the sign outside. Then things started moving inside. Not violently, just subtly. A plate out of place. A napkin folded differently than I left it. Once, a chair was pulled out slightly, like someone had sat there while I wasn't looking. I told myself it was me being forgetful, exhausted from the late shifts. But the feeling grew heavier each night. The radio in the corner sometimes crackled to life on its own. Faint static, broken whispers I couldn't make out. I would shut it off, only for it to come back minutes later. And the footsteps. At first, I thought I was imagining them. Just the floor settling. But they didn't come from the kitchen or the front area. They came from the hallway leading to the storage room, slow, deliberate, pacing back and forth. I checked every time. The hall was empty. One night, the humming fluorescent lights flickered and went out for a few seconds. In that darkness, I swear I heard breathing, not mine. I tried to laugh it off. Maybe the diner was just old. Maybe I was just alone too long. But the isolation of that place, the way the road outside disappeared into nothing, it started to feel oppressive. Heavy. Watching. I realized that the diner wasn't just quiet at night. It wasn't just empty. It was waiting. And I wasn't sure what. By my third week on the late-night shift, I knew something was off. It wasn't the car outside anymore. It wasn't the radio turning on by itself. It was the feeling that someone, or something, was inside with me when I was completely alone. One night, I was wiping down the counter when I heard the soft drag of shoes behind me. My heart jumped. I spun around. Nothing. Just the empty diner, dim neon light buzzing. I tried to focus on work, telling myself I was imagining things. But then I heard it again. Footsteps. Slower this time. Closer. Deliberate. Coming from the back hallway, where the storage room was. I grabbed a kitchen knife from the counter, my hands shaking, and crept toward the hall. My pulse thundered in my ears. The lights flickered overhead. A cold draft brushed against my neck. Then a whisper. Soft, low. Barely audible. You shouldn't be here. I froze. My rational mind screamed. There's no one there. The diner is empty. But my instincts told me otherwise. The storage room door, which I had left closed, now sat slightly ajar. Not pushed open violently, just shifted, like someone had eased it open while I wasn't looking. I took a step forward. The whisper came again. Closer. Right at the edge of hearing. I slammed the door shut. Locked it. My back pressed against the wall, knife raised. I couldn't see anything. Couldn't hear anything. But I knew. I wasn't alone. I realized with a sinking feeling, whatever had been here, moving quietly through the diner, watching me for nights, wasn't planning to leave. And it wasn't human. I don't know why I went to the back hallway. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe I just couldn't let it sit there waiting. The fluorescent lights flickered violently as I stepped toward the storage room. My knife felt heavy in my hand. Every creak of the floor made my stomach knot tighter. Then I saw it. A figure crouched in the shadows, just beyond the doorway. Too thin. Too tall. The dim neon reflected in its eyes, wide and unblinking. Its face was pale, almost waxy, with a faint smile stretched unnaturally across cracked lips. I froze. The figure didn't move at first. Then it stepped forward, silently, one deliberate step after another. Its gaze never left me. You shouldn't be here, it said again. Its voice was soft, almost casual, but the tone made my blood run cold. I swung the knife. Missed. It didn't flinch. Didn't retreat. Panic took over. I turned and ran toward the front door, slipping over the sticky floor. I fumbled with the lock. My hands shook too badly to work the keys. It followed. Slowly. Calmly. Certain. Finally, I managed to start the car. The engine roared. Headlights cut through the darkness outside. I looked back at the diner one last time. The figure stood in the doorway, watching, smiling. I drove away as fast as I could, heart pounding, hands gripping the wheel so tightly they hurt. And even miles away, I could still feel it watching me. I never went back to that diner. The next day, I handed in my keys and quit. The manager didn't ask many questions. He'd heard rumors about the place before, strange occurrences at night, objects moving, whispers, but no one ever stayed long enough to really notice. I tried to tell myself it was over. Just stress. Just exhaustion. Just a trick of the imagination amplified by the isolation and silence of the empty diner. But the memory didn't fade. Weeks later, I still felt eyes on me whenever I walked past quiet streets at night. Any shadow made me jump. Every unexpected sound made my pulse spike. And sometimes late at night, I hear faint whispers. Not outside. Not coming from anyone. Just inside my head. I've avoided diners on late-night drives ever since. I can't explain why, but the thought of empty booths, buzzing fluorescent lights, and that long, narrow hallway makes my stomach twist. I still see it sometimes in my mind, pale, tall, silent, smiling. Waiting. Patient. And the worst part is, I don't know if it's gone. Maybe it's still there. Still watching. Still waiting for the next person who thinks they're alone. And I know deep down that if I ever go back, I won't be alone. I took a delivery job because I needed flexible hours and some extra cash. At first, it seemed simple. Pick up food from restaurants, drop it off at people's homes, get paid. Easy. Quiet. Low stress. But my route led me farther and farther from the city, through back roads and isolated neighborhoods. Some houses sat miles apart, tucked behind long driveways and thick woods. The kind of places where if something went wrong, no one would hear you scream. The first week was routine. Evening deliveries. A few quiet suburban streets. The smell of grilled chicken, fries, and warm bread filling my car as I drove from one house to the next. I liked the solitude. No rush hour. No yelling customers. Just me, my car, and the road. The night sky stretched wide, filled with stars that felt brighter the farther I drove from the city lights. Sometimes I'd pull over to take it all in, feeling calm, almost meditative. But there was one street I started avoiding instinctively. A dead-end road, gravel crunching under my tires, surrounded by dense woods. The houses there were large, almost hidden, with long driveways that seemed to swallow your car as you approached. Something about the place felt wrong. I told myself it was just the isolation, just my imagination. But by the time I made my first delivery to one of those houses, I had no idea how wrong I was. The first delivery on that dead-end street should have been normal. I drove slowly up the long gravel driveway. The house was huge, dark, and silent. No lights inside. No cars in the yard. Just the distant sound of wind rustling through trees. My GPS said I was in the right place. I parked and grabbed the food, knocking on the door. No answer. I knocked again. Still nothing. Finally, I tried the door. It wasn't locked. I froze. Normally, people would answer immediately. But the door swung open with a low creak. I stepped inside, calling out, "Delivery." Nothing. The house smelled strange. A mix of cold wood, mildew, and something metallic I couldn't identify. I set the bag down and waited, but no one appeared. The faint hum of my car outside seemed miles away. Then I heard it. A soft shuffle behind me. I spun around. Nothing. Just long shadows stretching across the hardwood floor. I shook my head, telling myself I must be imagining things. But the feeling didn't go away. As I turned to leave, I noticed the bag had moved. Not far. Just a few feet. Like someone had touched it while I wasn't looking. I froze. The sound came again. Footsteps. Slow. Bare. Dragging lightly across the floor. Not upstairs. Not the living room. From the hallway behind me. I wanted to run, but my feet felt heavy, rooted to the spot. My hands shook. I glanced around. The hallway stretched into darkness, the kind of black that swallows everything. I wanted to tell myself it was a trick of the light, that I was tired, that no one could be in a house this isolated, but deep down I knew. Something was inside, something that hadn't come to the door, something that had been waiting, and I wasn't supposed to see it. My heart was racing. I wanted to leave. I wanted to run out the front door and get back to my car. But something stopped me, fear, curiosity, or maybe the realization that I wasn't alone. The footsteps moved again, closer this time. Soft, deliberate, measured. Not rushed. Not panicking. Just waiting. I grabbed the bag and turned toward the hallway, shining my phone's flashlight down the long corridor. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the walls. And then I saw it. A figure. Pale. Tall. Standing at the far end of the hall, barely visible in the faint glow from outside. Its head tilted slightly, watching me. Its hands hung at its sides. My pulse was hammered. I told myself it was someone hiding. Someone playing a joke. But the house was supposed to be empty. No lights on. No one expected. I tried to back out. My legs trembled. My phone slipped in my sweaty hands. A whisper came just above my ear. "Why are you here?" I spun around. No one. Just empty shadows. The bag slid from my hands. Food spilled across the floor. I scrambled to pick it up. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then a low creak from behind me. The door to the kitchen slowly opened, not enough to see inside. My chest tightened. My mind screamed at me to run. I should leave. I should get out now. But I couldn't move. And then I realized, this wasn't just a prank. It wasn't random. It had been waiting, watching, and now it knew I could see it. And whatever it was, it didn't plan to let me leave unchallenged. I bolted toward the front door, but my foot caught on the edge of the rug. I tumbled forward, scraping my hands across the hardwood. My phone flew from my grasp, the flashlight spinning wildly. That's when I saw it move. The figure wasn't just standing anymore. It glided, or stepped silently, toward me from the shadows. Too tall. Too thin. Its face. I couldn't see clearly, but the faint outline of a smile stretched impossibly wide. Pale, cold, wrong. "Why are you here?" it whispered again. The voice wasn't coming from the hallway. It wasn't coming from behind me. It was inside my head. Deep, chilling, impossible to ignore. I scrambled to my feet, my hands shaking. I grabbed the bag and swung it toward the figure, hoping to scare it away. It didn't flinch. Didn't retreat. I ran. Out the door. Across the gravel driveway. My car never felt so far. The moment I reached it, I slammed the doors, locked them, and started the engine. Tires crunched over the gravel. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Nothing. The house was dark. Silent. Empty. But the feeling didn't leave. I drove as fast as I dared down the dead-end road. My hands were numb, my vision blurred with adrenaline. Every shadow between the trees looked like it could move. Every gust of wind whispered warnings. And deep down, I knew it hadn't gone. It was still inside that house. Waiting. Patient. Calm. And I knew, even miles away, that it would be there the next time someone wandered too close. I never returned to that dead-end street. The next day, I quit the delivery job. The manager didn't question me. He had probably seen drivers quit for stranger reasons before. But I couldn't shake the memory. Every detail of that house, that hallway, the figure, haunted me. Weeks later, I still felt it. Every time I drove past isolated roads or saw a dark house, my heart raced. I could almost hear those whispers. That impossible voice asking, "Why are you here?" I tried to rationalize it. Maybe someone was squatting in the house. Maybe I was overworked. Maybe my imagination had turned the darkness into something real. But I knew it wasn't just my mind. And sometimes late at night, I swear I can see it in my dreams. Standing in the doorway, pale, tall, with that same wide smile. Waiting. Silent. Patient. I've avoided delivering food to unfamiliar neighborhoods ever since. Even passing by quiet, empty streets makes my stomach twist. And the worst part, I know it's still there. Still waiting for the next person who comes too close. I don't know what it is or what it wants. All I know is that if you ever find yourself alone on a dark, empty road, and you feel like someone or something is watching you from the shadows, you're probably right, and it's already started counting. I had been looking forward to this weekend for months. My friends and I rented a small cabin deep in the woods, miles away from the nearest town. No internet, no cell service, just trees, silence, and the occasional bird call. It was supposed to be peaceful, a chance to escape the stress of work and city life. The cabin itself was small but cozy, a wooden structure with a stone fireplace, a small kitchen, and a loft with 2 beds. The scent of pine and wood smoke greeted us when we opened the door. Outside, the forest stretched endlessly, shadows moving between the trunks as the sun lowered behind the hills. The first night was calm. We built a fire, cooked hot dogs, and drank coffee while the light faded. The stars were bright, scattered across the sky like spilled sugar. For a moment, It felt like we were the only people on Earth. I felt a sense of comfort in the isolation. Far from traffic, far from noise, far from anyone who could bother us. I didn't notice the first subtle sign that something was off, a faint rustling from the edge of the tree line, so soft that I almost dismissed it. And I had no idea that by the time morning came, that tiny noise would grow into something impossible to ignore, something that would make the forest feel alive in a way I could never forget. The first night passed quietly, or at least I thought it did. Around midnight, I woke to a faint noise outside the cabin. A soft scrape, like something dragging across the forest floor. My friends were asleep in the loft, breathing evenly. I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was an animal, a deer, raccoon, maybe a fallen branch, but the sound was deliberate. Too steady, too patterned to be random. I sat up on the couch, straining to hear. The wind was still. The fire had burned low, leaving only embers that cast long shadows across the walls. Then I heard it again, a soft tapping at the edge of the porch. I grabbed my flashlight, my heart pounding. Shining it toward the darkness, I saw nothing but trees and shadows. The tapping stopped. My breathing slowed, and I told myself it was nothing. Maybe my imagination. Over the next few hours, subtle things began to unsettle me. The door I had locked earlier was slightly ajar in the morning, even though I remembered turning the knob twice. A chair in the kitchen was turned just enough that it faced the wrong direction. I chalked it up to sleepwalking friends, but when I asked, no one had touched anything. At night, the noises returned. Footsteps in the woods, soft but constant, circling the cabin. Scratches against the siding, just enough to make me jump. Once, a shadow moved past the edge of the loft window, so fast I thought I had imagined it, but I couldn't shake the feeling it had been someone, or something, watching us. The isolation that had seemed comforting during the day now felt oppressive. The forest wasn't just empty. It was alive, and it was aware of us. By the third night, I barely slept. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves made my chest tighten. My mind replayed every sound, every shadow, turning ordinary noises into threats. I realized then that whatever was out there wasn't random. It was patient. It was deliberate, and I had no idea what it wanted, or how close it had been all along. By the third night, I couldn't ignore it any longer. The forest around the cabin wasn't just noisy, it was stalking us. Every sound seemed purposeful, every shadow deliberate. I started noticing patterns, footsteps that stopped whenever we looked outside, branches breaking in rhythm with our movements, faint whispers that I could never fully make out. I stayed awake, flashlight in hand, listening. The fire had burned down to embers, and the cold night air crept through the cracks in the cabin walls. My friends slept unaware, trusting that this was just a quiet forest. I couldn't. Then I saw it. A figure, barely visible through the trees, standing just at the edge of the clearing. Too tall, too thin, its head tilted slightly, motionless. Watching, waiting. I froze. My mind screamed at me to wake my friends, but fear rooted me to the floor. I couldn't move. The figure shifted. Just a small movement, barely enough to notice, but it was enough. My heart pounded in my chest. It was closer. I tried to tell myself it was a trick of the shadows, a trick of my mind. But deep down I knew better. Footsteps sounded again, this time behind the cabin. Slower, closer, deliberate, not hurried, not random. I grabbed the nearest object, a fireplace poker, and pressed myself against the wall. My breathing was loud in my own ears. I dared not move, dared not blink, afraid that even the smallest motion would draw attention. Then came the whisper. Soft, almost casual. Why are you here? It came from all directions at once, yet somehow from nowhere. And in that moment, I realized the truth. We weren't just being watched. We were being hunted. And whatever it was, it had been waiting for us to feel safe, so it could make us feel terrified. I don't know why I left the loft. Fear, adrenaline, or pure instinct. I just ran toward the main door, hoping to get outside to escape. The moment I opened the cabin door, the forest greeted me. Not with wind, not with silence, but with movement. Shadows shifted unnaturally, just beyond the firelight. Something glided between the trees, too tall, too thin, too wrong. It stepped closer, slowly, deliberately. I could see its face now, pale and angular, with a faint, impossible smile. Its eyes reflected the faint glow of the embers, unblinking and hollow. "Why are you here?" it whispered, low and calm, and the sound seemed to vibrate through my bones. I stumbled backward. My flashlight slipped, rolling across the dirt. Its beam landed on the figure again. Not far, Not hidden. Close enough that I could feel the air move as it approached. I turned and ran, crashing through branches, tripping over roots, my friends' voices screaming behind me. The forest itself seemed alive, shifting to block my path. I reached my car. Keys trembled in my hand. The engine roared to life, headlights cutting through the darkness. I glanced back one last time. The cabin was empty. The clearing was empty. But I knew it hadn't gone. It was patient, and I knew waiting deep down it would always be there, watching, hidden in the shadows, lurking at the edge of the forest, ready for the next person foolish enough to wander into its territory. We never returned to that cabin. Even days later, the forest haunted me. Every shadow outside my window, every rustle in the trees, made my heart race. I couldn't sleep without checking the corners of the room, convinced that something was watching. My friends tried to rationalize it. Imagination, nerves, the isolation, but I knew what I had seen. I had felt its presence. The way it moved silently, patiently, like it had been waiting for us to feel safe before showing itself. Weeks passed, yet the memory didn't fade. I replayed every detail in my mind, the whispers, the shadows, the impossible smile. Sometimes, I even imagined it following me through city streets, always just out of sight, always patient. I've avoided the woods ever since. Even passing by a small patch of trees or an empty clearing makes my stomach tighten. And late at night, when the world is quiet, I sometimes hear it again. A soft, deliberate sound in the back of my mind. A whisper. Why are you here? I don't know what it was or why it targeted us. All I know is this: the forest isn't empty. It never has been. And I'll never forget that first weekend, when something alive and patient waited in the shadows, watching us, learning us, and reminding me that even in the most peaceful, isolated place, you are never truly alone.